Oh my word, about 3 hours ago, the devs dropped some incredible information. I feel terrible. I've been at the PC, but didn't look at any of my notifications. This is probably the biggest news we've seen come from Guild Wars for a year, 2 years, as they've just announced another expansion. They haven't given us a name, they haven't given us a release date or really anything. There's a little bit of concept art, but just the confirmation that they are going big with updates to this product in the future and just not whatever other things the studios are working on is really, really big. So in this video, I want to talk about exactly what ArenaNet said, give you my thoughts, and maybe we can flesh this out with some other information. They're also saying in this same post what their plans are for going forward with this year, that I'd like to read all of it. So we'll go over to the website in just 1 second. Let's give ourselves a little bit of context here. There have been a lot of fears in the community for the past, year or so now, that they might not be doing any more X-Packs with Guild Wars 2, that it might just be this idea of sagas going forwards. Last year was very bumpy. Around about exactly 12 months ago, we heard that many devs at the studio who'd been working on non-Guild Wars stuff had been laid off. People were worried that Guild Wars 2, therefore, might be affected, and a lot of us, I have to say, myself included, kind of thought ArenaNet might just be transitioning away from the MMO. Today's news is big because it really confirms that this MMO, this game, is a big project for them. There are significant things to be excited for, whether that's in 2020 or a little bit later. Well, I guess that's what we can now keep our eye on as we go forward. And obviously, there's going to be saga news going with that. So let's go to the website. I know that's what you guys want us to do more than anything else. See what the devs have to say. So here's the post. It just came out a couple of hours ago, as I say, looking ahead to spring, summer, and the future. So this is a bit like what they did a couple of months ago, right before the end of last year, where they confirmed how this quarter would go. And now they're giving us something of a roadmap going forward again, which, you know, a lot of people have been looking for, that kind of communication and some transparency on what we actually have to expect. So they say spring is fast approaching, with summer hot on its heels, and it's time for some updates on what's next for Guild Wars 2. I mean, the trees outside my house are already blossoming, so I would say we are in spring here. We've got plenty of great content updates in the works, beginning with Visions of the Past, Steel and Fire next week. That's March 17th. And in the coming months, you'll see return of new festivals, new episodes of Icebrood Saga, and a few surprises. So I'm going to have a lot of other videos about this thing next week, the Visions of the Past update. We already did a video on it earlier in the week. If you guys didn't see that, I recommend you do check it out. It's way bigger than I was expecting it to be. And they've even given a little bit of a lore announcement recently about some kind of surprise new character that might be appearing. But yeah, they do also confirm stuff to do with the festivals. And check it out, Q2 2020. As I say, this image is a lot like what we saw closing out last year. What do we have this time, though? Well, the Super Adventure Box and the Dragon Bash returning. Dragon Bash newly added last year, of course. Super Adventure Festival. They're not giving us any details on whether we'll see a World 3 or any of those sorts of things. But, you know, I think the odds on that are still as low as they ever were. For PvE, you've got the Icebrood Saga with the bonus events returning. Bonus events they played with last year. We haven't really seen many. I guess the devs were taking stock of what they liked about the initial slew of them, and now they're coming back. And then there's some competitive stuff with the Tournament of Legends returning and legendary accessories being available from competitive. So they'll break these sections up right here. First of all, festivals. On our next release following the Steel and Fire is the Super Adventure Festival. Moto will open up the box in Ratasum to welcome all jumping, bauble collecting heroic types. They don't say much more. As summer heats up, we'll have the Dragon Bash to celebrate your victories against the Elder Dragons with hologram battles, the racing, and so on. Again, I don't know whether they'll really update that much from what we saw in the 2019 update. Both festivals will feature traditional activities, annual achievements, and new rewards. And that's kind of the status quo for festivals, right? They don't expand on the feature base itself, but there are new rewards each time, so invested players are into them. Next, you got Living World. The next major release following the Super Adventure Festival is the third full episode of Icebrood Saga, in which we'll get some respite from the bitter cold. I'm actually quite looking forward to this. If you remember when the saga itself was announced last summer, they talked about how the first two maps after Grothmar were going to be connected to one another. So we've always kind of known that we were going to be in the Shiver Peaks for a while. We knew that Drakkar was going to be a world boss for a long time. So there haven't been many surprises because of their announcement last summer. We sort of knew Bureau Marches was the be-all for a while. But now finally we're at a weird place with the Living World where it's like, okay, where is the next full release going to take place? They say Bangar's war machine has driven out of the far Shiver Peaks and further west to the dense forests of the Woodland Cascades, an area inspired by the beautiful Pacific Northwest that ArenaNet calls home. Now, this is a place that we could visit a little bit of in Guild Wars 1. I would kind of love to go back and play and show you guys this area. This is where we actually first met the Quetzal variety of Tengu, you know, the beautiful green parrot Tengu. There's a lot of cool things, and it really feels like we're following what we did a decade ago in GW1 with the Eye of the North expansion, where you were in the far Shiver Peaks and then you kind of went through here. Except a full map. There's a delta on the world map. Let's go back in game real quick, 1 second. The specific area we're talking about, guys, is this area, the Woodland Cascades. And of course, we did have the raid release, the Bastion of the Penitent. But that's like underground. I know it looks like it's overground, but this is pretty much all just hidden. I wonder if we'll be able to walk on top of that eventually. I've always wanted to go to this delta for years and years and years. Probably something to do with the fact it's called the Janthier Bay and is near the Isles of Janthier, which would be more Massart stories. I don't know whether we're really going to get much of that in this saga. It doesn't feel like it's particularly related. But yeah, the idea that we'll actually be able to travel all of these areas. There was a thin slice of it we could go to in Guild Wars 1. Maybe I can do a dedicated video about. But yeah, out of the cold, and we're going to be pushing further over. There's also the question of this water here and the deep sea dragon, who I am still convinced will be a part of this saga. Maybe not as early as next episode, but sometime soon. We'll see. The episode's environment will focus on capturing and defending territories in a PvE map using objectives similar to World vs. World to drive enemies back, defeat familiar foes, and maximize the potential for rewards. You'll also tackle a new strike mission with a different spin on gameplay mechanics. We don't really know what this means, but the idea that the next map was going to be kind of World vs. Worldy is indeed some information we had a while ago. Then we have systems. Next week, on the March 17th, you'll manifest your power where everyone can witness it by crafting the legendary Amulet Transcendence in PvP and the legendary ring Conflux in World vs. World. Competitive players can look forward to the return of the Tournament of Legends towards the beginning of summer. So, I really wasn't expecting this. Legendary amulets do not exist in Guild Wars yet. We have a couple of trinkets that have started to get filled in. And if you had told me, hey, Wooden Potatoes, they're about to announce a third expansion for the game, I would have thought that a legendary amulet would have been the things in the expansion, you know, like a big end game thing to go for in all that new content when the X-Pack comes. But no, they give us the legendary amulet right away, and it's PvP exclusive, which is crazy. I mean, inevitably, PvE players are going to want that. And the devs tend to be quite careful with stuff like that. So I wonder whether the PvE version comes with the X-Pack or maybe some kind of Living World release later. But you can get it in PvP early, which, you know, if this was last year, back when I was still into PvP, I think that would have been really cool news. World vs. Wilders get another new ring as well. Conflux, we'll see what all the animations and stuff look like there. I'm not going to bag this video down speculating about that. But there you have it. And then, obviously, opportunities to win legendaries with the Tournament of Legends again, which finally looks like it might be becoming a regular thing. Plan to bring back some of the bonus PvE events we ran in 2019. And introduce a new one as well. I don't know what the new one will be. But it's nice this because they did spend a long time talking about those things. And we had a few. And they were clearly good ideas but needed slight tweaks. And then they just disappeared. So it's good to see them back. Now here's the bit that I'm most excited to talk about. Probably you guys who clicked the video are most excited about. A glimpse of the distant future. Finally, we have some special news to share. Development is underway on a third Guild Wars 2 expansion. The team is hard at work, and it's much too soon to talk about any details right now, including features, story, release date, or development timeline. We'll have to stick to that until we're ready to reveal more information to the world. When we are ready, you'll definitely know. Thank you for your patience and support. We'd like to leave you with a piece of early concept art so that you can dream along with us about where we're headed, ... So, let's open with the concept art. To me, this is screaming Cantha. It looks, you know, Eastern style architecture. We've got some, you know, nice lush foliage and the cherry blossom trees, the big swinging bell. This very much feels like some of those areas of Xingji that we haven't seen since back in Guild Wars 1. Obviously, there is no actual confirmation. And sometimes, by the way, if you save that art, you'll see they have an interesting file name. This one is just expansion3.jpg. So if it said expansion cantha.jpg, we might have had a little bit more of a hint there. But yeah, I really do feel like we might be going south. We might be going to that landmass. I think it would make sense for the devs to pick that as a location, just because the community's been talking about it for so long. And it certainly is a rich setting with a lot of cool lore that they can tie into. Another thing that makes me think kind of Cantha is that waterfall in the background. I tend to think of Cantha with these high cliffs and waterfalls and mountain ranges pushing up against these coastal environments. That this just feels very, very, very similar to. Obviously, that's not confirmation. If you would ask me for where else this might be, I mean, that's the other thing. I really couldn't tell you. There are other places in Tyria, you know, the world. The world is huge. There are places in the mist. There are all kinds of things this could ultimately be that has nothing to do with the south. But none of those make sense to me from a studio perspective. They know that when we look at this, we're going to think Cantha. And they probably, if the truth was they weren't doing Cantha, they probably wouldn't want to set our expectations in the wrong direction, if that makes sense. So those are my preliminary thoughts, and maybe we can do a really dedicated production just about this Cantha concept going forwards. There are some other things I want to talk about in terms of this expansion news as well here, as in why are they doing this? The team is hard at work. It's too soon to talk about anything at all. That is actually a difference to what we saw with the other expansions. So, and it's funny because we've only got 2 to talk about all these years that Guild Wars 2's been out. Let's run on with it. You had Heart of Thorns being announced in a very much, you know, ready state, as in they had a lot to talk about. They had, when it became clear that Heart of Thorns existed, we knew that it was going to be the Maguma Jungle. We knew that it was going to be about this new Elder Dragon they just announced to us at the end of Living World Season 2. We had like a cutscene rolling into it, and then it was a few months of roll into the expansion, undoubtedly, and they started giving us Elite Specialization news that they trickled out over their stream week by week by week. But once we heard that Heart of Thorns was going to be a thing, they very clearly had a lot to say immediately. And that was a period of, what, like half a year or so that was going on, and the expansion finally came out. With Path of Fire, it was even more exaggerated. We had Living World Season 3 end, and an expansion announcement pretty much instantly. And it was a tiny wait. They did almost no, like, wind-up. There wasn't huge amounts of press. I remember personally going out to the studio to see stuff with Path of Fire and realizing, oh my god, this is like 2 releases away. There's like almost no time to talk about this expansion. I remember they announced the X-Pack on their stream. I myself personally hosted the post show and was dropping like hours of new information of a fully made, ready to go expansion that they just hadn't talked about until the last moment. So it was really, really, really very quick from expansion announcement to drop. Now here, we seem to be in a totally different direction. It looks like we're going to hear that the expansion does exist today. And it might be, what, half a year before we even get any new information. It might be a full year before the thing's out. It might be a year and a half before the thing's out. So the devs are playing a very different hand this time. And what this is really doing, I think, is it's trying to set the community at ease. It's trying to tell people, hey, Guild Wars 2 is worth looking at. I think it's that they've realized that a lot of members of the community are starting to think, okay, is Guild Wars really doing anything special, or is it just waiting for some new thing to come from the studio that's not Guild Wars? And they want to give us all confidence that the game is a big priority and the game will have cool stuff. It's just a long way off. So this is kind of new ground for Guild Wars, I think, in as much as we've heard an expansion exists and we could be in for a bit of a waiting game before it's there. But the studio's intent and focus on the franchise, I think, will do wonders for people. They've given us a little bit of a bone about Cantha. When would I predict we maybe get more information about this? I'm not expecting until after summer, at least. Probably all this other stuff they've announced going on with the game will be the next things to take our attention. And then, I don't know, maybe around PAX later on this year, we might get a little bit of something else. And we'll see how it goes. I think this could be a very good way for the devs to keep a bit of excitement bubbling up for the expansion. I'm not actually sure I agree with how they did things with the Path of Fire or even necessarily the Heart of Thorns release. So we'll see. That's it really, guys. An announcement of an expansion that is probably Cantha. Wow, I can't believe that I'm actually here saying that to you right now. Obviously, we've got a ton of other big releases as well, including one in just a week. You guys can keep tuned for all of that, and I'll let you know what I think more about this concept art and some of the stuff we'll be going to very soon. Thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next one very soon.